Some traditions are followed because people remember why they began. Others are followed because no one wants to discover what happens when they end. According to an old Korean legend, there was once a mountain village where every family left a bowl of warm rice outside their door each night. The bowls were always empty by morning. No one ever saw who came to eat. And the one man who tried never spoke of it again. High in the mountains of old Korea, where cedar forests wrapped themselves around narrow valleys and mist lingered long after sunrise, stood a village that seemed forgotten by time. The people believed the world was shared with unseen beings that moved quietly alongside the living. They did not worship them or fear them openly. Instead, they showed respect through small acts that had been repeated for generations. The oldest of these customs was the evening offering of rice. Just before bed, every household placed a freshly filled wooden bowl outside its front door. The rice was still warm enough to send gentle wisps of steam into the cold night air. Once the bowl had been set down, the door was closed without another glance. Parents warned their children never to peek outside after sunset, no matter what they thought they heard. Some guests, the elders always said, should never know they have been seen. One autumn evening, a traveling scholar named Minhyo arrived in the village. He had spent years collecting old legends and believed every superstition had a forgotten explanation. The bowls of rice fascinated him. Every morning they were spotless, yet no footprints surrounded them, even after fresh snow. The villagers offered no answers beyond a quiet smile. An elderly widow finally told him, "Our village has been safe for longer than anyone remembers. We do not ask why." Curiosity settled into Minyo's mind, like a splinter he could not remove. On the night of the harvest moon, he left his own bowl outside the widow's house and hid beside a paper window, careful not to make a sound. The moon bathed the village in silver light, and the mountains stood perfectly still beneath the stars. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Then, without warning, every sound vanished. The wind disappeared first. The pine branches stopped moving, and even the stream beyond the fields seemed to fall silent. It was as though the entire valley had been wrapped inside an invisible blanket. The bowl remained where it was. Then the steam rising from the rice began to drift sideways, not with the wind, toward something. Minho stared into the empty darkness, but there was nothing standing outside the door. Even so, the steam curled gently around the shape of someone who could not be seen. It traced the outline of shoulders. A head, long sleeves hanging motionless in the night. The rice began disappearing one mouthful at a time. No hands appeared. No face emerged. Only the slow, unmistakable rhythm of someone quietly sharing a meal. Munio tried to convince himself that fear was playing tricks on his eyes. Then he noticed something that froze the breath in his chest. The bowl was not resting on the ground anymore. It floated barely the width of a finger above the wooden step, as though someone unseen was holding it with perfect care. When the final grain of rice disappeared, the bowl lowered itself gently back into place. The silence remained. Then something moved. Not outside. Inside the house. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind him. Minho turned so quickly that the paper lantern beside him trembled. The room was empty. When he looked back toward the window, the doorway outside was empty too. But the paper window no longer reflected only his face. Standing directly behind him was the faint outline of another figure. It had no eyes, no mouth, only the pale shape of someone patiently watching. Minho spun around again. Nothing. The room was empty. When he slowly faced the window once more, the reflection had disappeared. Morning finally arrived, and the widow stepped outside to collect the bowl. She paused for a long moment before looking at Minho. "You watched," she said quietly. He could not answer. The old woman turned the bowl upside down. One grain of rice clung stubbornly to the wood. Her face lost all color. That has never happened before. That evening, every house in the village placed out 2 bowls instead of 1. No explanation was given. Minho left before sunset and never returned. Years later, people who claimed to have visited the same valley spoke of finding abandoned homes slowly being reclaimed by the forest. Yet every so often, they noticed fresh bowls sitting outside weathered doorways, filled with steaming rice that no living hands could have prepared. Old Korean folklore speaks of invisible visitors who were treated with quiet respect rather than fear. Some believed they were ancestral spirits. Others thought they were mountain beings who protected those who honored ancient customs. Whatever the truth may be, one lesson appears again and again in those stories. The unseen world rarely asks to be believed. It only asks not to be disturbed. Thank you for listening to When the World Whispered. Until our next story, keep wondering.